And with no further ado, let's get this party started and invoke the Database Configuration Assistant and deploy a database. I'm going to, on my Windows-based system, open an administrative command prompt. On Linux, of course, you would open up a terminal prompt. And as long as you have your Oracle binaries installed into your system path, you should be able to launch DBCA from wherever you are in a command prompt session. By the way, by means of background, you might recall that on this Windows machine earlier in the course we installed Oracle Database 12c, the instance, but I chose not to install a database at that time. So during the first run of the Database Configuration Assistant, we're not going to have all the options available to us because at this point I don't have any database on the system. So the notion of configuring, deleting, or managing databases just isn't part of what's going on. Now, if you're in a larger shop or if you're a service provider where you're deploying databases all the time, you definitely want to start thinking of templating these database definitions. And if you're thinking, Tim, why are we using Database Configuration Assistant? Isn't create database part of the structured query language? The answer to that is yes, and you absolutely can use SQL to do all this if you want to. I just want to show you Database Configuration Assistant because it, in my humble opinion, gives us the best of both worlds. We can use user-friendly tools to specify all of our options and then actually save this all as a template that's reusable, and we can actually generate the SQL if we want to have that for maybe compliance and record collection purposes. We'll get back to templates. For now, let's choose to create database, and we'll click next. In step 2 of 5, there's a lot going on here actually. Even though there's all this stuff going on up above, this is what's called the basic installation method. Pretty crazy, isn't it? Create a database with default configuration, and you give it a global name, which is going to be a unique name for the database across your entire organization, whether you're storing the data files in the file system or in an ASM instance. On this machine, you'll recall we covered ASM and I installed it on this machine, so it detects that and actually picks up the appropriate file group, which is plus data 1 on my system. If I hit browse, I can verify that I have that disk group. I can verify its redundancy, its state, etc. The character set is really important actually. The character set is something you want to confirm prior to running the Database Configuration Assistant or using the Create Database SQL statement. This deals with how characters are encoded in the database. Things like alphanumeric characters, non-alphanumeric characters, and numbers. How are those encoded or represented in the database? And that is going to in turn affect how items are sorted in your tables and in your select statements, you see? And there's various and sundry options. If you read the Oracle literature, they'll recommend the Unicode character set wherever possible, simply because that involves a lot of characters from across the entire world. The old school ASCII character set is limited, I think it's 127 characters. That's not going to help if, for instance, you have a database that is going to store Russian language data or Mandarin data. The NLS-Lang initialization parameter is used to set the character set in the database, but here you're setting a global default, and again, it's something you do want to measure twice and cut once. The administrative password is going to be your sys account, your super user password, and notice that we're also specifying the Oracle Service Account password in a Windows installation. And finally, notice that the default is to actually create a container database, and you have the ability to add a pluggable database name as well. So now that I've described those basic options, let's actually flip over to advanced mode so we can have a lot more control over how this installation proceeds.